So, many of you may have been following this build for a while. I know I have, because I've been trying to figure it out. My Temporal Blade build. I went from Temporal Blade and, Temporal Blade, Borrow Time, and Venator's Knife, to then using Temporal Blade, Borrow Time, and Cyclone Slice, which I've tried using twice. Ultimately, I couldn't justify using both Cyclone Slice and Temporal Blade, because you just can't... You can't spam Temporal Blade and actually do damage to make a difference with your time against expeditions or even bosses, if you want to use Temporal Blade against them too, and use Cyclone Slice. There is a build for Cyclone Slice, but it involves you only using Cyclone Slice. Let's just leave it at that. and completely maxing your anomaly power too, which I'm not about, because you know how much I like my tankiness, even without leech healing helping me. So I finally realized, you know what I haven't been realizing I should do, because I tried using this build with Spectral Spike, and Spectral Spike does not help Temporal Blade much, because it's not a spamming skill. Like, if you look at Spectral Spike's description in the patch tree, as you can see as I hover over it all, like, it is meant for fast hitting attacks to stack up, which is why it's best with Twisted Rounds, hands down. And then Cyclone Slice too. That's the build I was talking about, of just only using Cyclone Slice with Spectral Spike. But Temporal Blade cannot get benefit from it, which is why you've seen this build go both trees, which was good for what I was doing then, but now I've realized I've been making a big mistake. This is now, I'm actually kind of proud of this build now, because now you've seen my Hunt the Prey and Borrow Time Twisted Rounds build. I still have that one. That doesn't use a legendary set. And I feel like this one kind of combines that with my Temporal Blade one into a better build for both of them. So it's almost like I only have two Trickster builds now. My main one you've seen, and now this one. And I like this one because it's totally different too. Like, all three of my skills are different from my main Trickster build. I don't use any of the same stuff. I go a totally different tree and use totally different skills. And yet I'm still a super tank. That now is like, I like the combination of Temporal Blade, because Temporal Blade, especially when you get enough anomaly power, that's the thing, that's why I like it on a tank build. Because you don't have to go full anomaly power on everything to get a lot out of Temporal Blade, but you still have to stack a good amount of anomaly power. But it's really, especially because you stack a bunch just by going into the bottom tree and getting Altered Executioner, which boosts your anomaly power based off every enemy in close range, and it has no cap. So that's why if I go into like Martial Complex or Frontline, and I like instances where I just have a crazy amount of enemies around me, well, that's fine, because then two Temporal Blades and literally everybody, even the elites, usually die in one hit. because then my Temporal Blade damage is getting boosted a crazy amount because of that one skill node. And then, of course, combined with all the other stuff I'm doing too, with Anomaly Echo and Power Assimilation and just going the bottom tree route and having anomaly skill nodes and having anomaly power on one of my gear pieces. But this build is just perfect as a tank still that also can dish out a lot against any kind of enemy now. The best part now is I now have damage that can destroy single target enemies like bosses, and thanks to Temporal Blade with anomaly power stacking to an extent, I can now also wipe out groups even better instantly, which my other Hunt the Prey, Trickster, Twisted Rounds build really struggled with, honestly. He could still do it because he had aggressive teleportation spamming and mods on his guns, with unforeseen force boosting all that damage too, but it wasn't enough to just like really instantly destroy a group. This guy can just almost instantly destroy a mass group around him, and then also focus his damage too. So he's able to do massive AoE damage and also focus his damage and also be a super tank still. Now, he's going to be the trickster who's always going to take damage, though, because his shield regen is so much weaker now. Because Twisted Rounds, like one of my skills doesn't give me any shield pretty much, Twisted Rounds, and it's always active. And the other two skills don't give me much. Like, Phasing at least makes Temporal Blade give me a little bit of shield, and then Hunt the Prey always gives you a little bit of shield. But I'm also not maximizing my cooldown or any of that, spamming Hunt the Prey though, so. My shield regen from skills is now very low. It's still there, it's still enough, I would say, to still make a difference. But that's why I would also say if you look at my build, and yeah, I'm not playing music, I'll probably do another one. I just need to talk about this build in this video. And also you'll see when I beat this Arbiter in literally, I think 36 or 37 seconds, and this was the very first time when I went back and fought him again. I think I beat him in under 35 seconds or less, which makes this dude now my best Arbiter ender. Like, he kills him actually the quickest. He kills him quicker than my Minigun Techno, and he kills him quicker than my Seismic Commander Bleed Dev. In fact, my Bleed Dev, I think, takes almost a full minute. I think it's just under that, maybe like 55 seconds for him. And then my Minigun Techno is the closest to him now. He was my best. I think he was like 40 to 45 seconds. But he's missing a mod, though. Like, he's still missing Captain Hunter, which is obviously a big one for the final Arbiter. So when he gets his final mod, and I think he's missing a status power buff too, he might still be able to kill him just as quickly as this guy can. But still, as of now, this guy is actually the best for the final Arbiter now, in terms of killing him the quickest. And of course, still being the tank. And you saw, I decided to put Fortress on my gun, because I realized that's the best thing to do on him, because he's still missing a little bit of armor and resistance, and Fortress pretty much, and again, because he doesn't have nearly as much shield regen, or just regen in general as my other Trickster and my other tank builds too. So he needs more, I feel like, to really rack up a super tank still. As I still want to be just, invincible in every situation, never die once ever on this dude, no matter what I'm doing. Those are the builds I always like still. I gotta do that still before I focus on damage, is make sure the tankiness is still just as insanely OP. And yeah, this guy's good because I was able to, thanks to using Edge of Time armor to buff Temporal Blade damage, I'm also able to, it works out where I can use the mods on the right gear and I can go max health on 4 of my pieces. And then I go a tiny bit in the middle tree to get that resistance buff. And then Fortress is great because it buffs me, and then it also gives me a damage buff that affects all my damage, Spectral Spike and Temporal Blade again. So the last thing I really only need on this dude is the same gun you've seen, but with more firepower and death chains instead of Storm Whip, and then it'd be perfect.